Welcome to episode 27 of The Blind Exorcist. I'm Justin D., your host. Don't forget to tap join or subscribe so you can get notified of new episodes. Also, share this episode out to family, friends, and on social media. Thanks so much for your support. Now, let's dive in. With Halloween approaching, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about what really happens on this holiday, a day that is, in fact, the most important in the Satanic calendar. Today's episode sheds light on the dark reality behind the celebrations and the spiritual warfare that takes place. My guest, who we'll call Hannah to protect her from the coven, is a brave survivor of satanic ritual abuse. I will also be masking Hannah's voice to protect her identity. On the surface, her life seemed normal. Her father was a Little League baseball coach, and her mother was active on the PTA. But behind closed doors, Hannah endured unimaginable horrors. She was forced to sacrifice 2 of her own children to Satan and was programmed with altars to return to the coven no matter how hard she fought to escape. In this episode, we discuss not only the horrific abuse she suffered, but also her incredible bravery in breaking free from the cult. Hannah's story is one of courage, faith, and the spiritual warfare she battled to find healing through exorcism and Christ after years of torment. For those of you seeking a way out of satanic torment, I'm here to help. Hannah's brave journey shows that there's always a way out, and I pray it brings you the hope you need to find your freedom. Without any further ado, let's meet Hannah. Hannah, welcome to The Blind Exorcist.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hannah, it is a blessing to have you come on to the show to share your story with the audience. And my hope is that if there are people currently involved in Satanism, whether generational, through family bloodline, or for somebody who self-practices, or maybe those who are in a coven and wanting out, I know that the majority of people that I've worked with enter into Satanism or any occult practice the majority of time because of trauma. Remember, Satan loves trauma because that's where demons enter. If you've experienced trauma in your life, more than likely you have demons. The warlocks that I have worked with, the witches, and I am currently working with a satanic ritual abuse victim. This particular person is wanting out of the coven, and this is going to be a very long journey. And Hannah has experienced this redemptive, long healing journey that got her out. And we're going to jump into this. But if you're listening and you are involved in Satanism and you want out, you've came to the right episode. There is help for you and there is hope for you. So it's my intention, it's God's intention, it's Christ's intention that you understand that there is hope. And you are going to get a lot of hope by hearing Hannah's story. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here, and we're going to give out this information. Again, the main purpose is for people who want out and want hope. Others, it's going to be for informational purposes, that you understand that Satanism is real. People live double lives. There are Satanists who are in law enforcement. There are Satanists who are judges. There are Satanists who are politicians, because it goes back to a Luciferian rule. They believe that Lucifer is good and that he's going to bring peace to the earth. Hannah, let me come over to you. Is Satanism real?
Yes, it is. It's extremely real. And I have the scars inside and outside that could prove it.
You mentioned the scars inside and outside. I'm very sorry to hear that. I praise Jesus that those have been healed. Again, for those listening wanting out, this is a testimony. Hannah, let's start in the beginning. As a child, did you have any awareness that you were born into a Luciferian cult? Your family goes back generationally, but were you aware of this in your childhood?
I was aware that my family worshipped Satan. What I wasn't aware of was that Satan wasn't God. I was told very early on that Satan was God, our creator, and the Christian God, he was really Satan. He was really the devil, the bad guy. That's the way they would tell us as children, that God is the bad guy and Satan is the good guy. So it was very confusing. Took me a long time because of brainwashing and programming to realize that they were lying. And we did live a double life where we went to church on Sunday and Wednesday, Assembly of God Church. And then on other days of the week, we went to a place in the woods that was a compound type place and did rituals, which included sacrifices and an evil that is unimaginable. Just torture and evil that it's just so unimaginable. Most people would never be able to think up some of the things they did.
And this is how you know it comes from the hand of Satan. It's very common for people to be fed information like she's explaining as a child, the confusion, the programming. Imagine this, if as a child you're told that Satan is God and the Christian God is evil, he's actually Satan. And this is what you're told over and over until you're brainwashed. And so Hannah was raised in this. Very common for people to go to church. It's a great way to hide the cult. Now, I'm not mentioning this to put paranoia on people, but this is fact. Many people in the occult, people in Satanism, live a double life that they are Christians and go to church. What better way to disguise the real intent of Satan? So, speaking of double lives, Hannah, your parents that raised you in this Luciferian cult, did they live double lives? What were they like in real life? I mean, were they walking around in dark robes and hooded robes and holding black candles and pentagrams? No, I can answer that myself. What were they like in real life?
In our everyday life, that's what we refer to it as, our everyday life. We did normal things, what most people think of as normal. Like my father was a Little League coach. He managed a Little League team for many years. My mother was on the PTA. They donated money to different organizations to help people out. They were thought as wonderful citizens and people of the community who were always helping others out. Seeing that as a child, seeing both sides of them, my mother was my worst abuser. She was horribly abusive in every way. Some of the ways that she would abuse me would be sexual, and she would use instruments that would tear me. And that, seeing her like that, and then seeing her having that experience with her, and then having her take me to the beach, and we're playing on the beach and stuff, it was very disturbing and crazy making for me. It's just like, how do you figure that out, that a person could be so kind one minute and so evil the next? And that's the way the people in the coven were.
It's heartbreaking to hear what you've went through, Hannah. I'm very sorry that you've had to go through that. And some of you listening, have went through similar situations. Again, there is hope and healing and restoration of a sound mind to come back to the Lord. But notice this. You have Satanists who are little league coaches on the PTA board. Understand that. As Christians, because we are not trained in exorcism, deliverance, the majority, we say this all the time, of Christian churches do not believe Christians can have demons. So if you don't believe Christians can have demons, why wouldn't Satanists live a double life and go to church? You don't believe they can have demons anyhow. Very sad. Very sad. So normal roles in life. How is it possible for a person to live two different lives? Through dissociation, or what some refer to as multiple personality disorder, MPD. Many people involved in a coven or Satanism develop alters. An alter, or alternative personality state, is a separate identity within the person's mind with its own distinct emotions, thoughts, preferences, and dislikes, completely independent of the core personality. For example, a person might have an alter who is a loving father and baseball coach or a caring mother on the PTA. Meanwhile, the core personality or other alters within the individual may be involved in Satanism, serving as warlocks, witches, high priests, and more. In satanic cults, it's very common for them to create disassociation, to create alters. How do they do this? One common way, and this comes from research and working with satanic ritual abuse victims, that they combine sexual stimulation, drugs, so they may have a child come to a ritual, give them drugs, alcohol, sexually stimulate them, and at the same time inflict severe pain. And in a child's mind, it cannot process what's happening. So you have sexual arousal and intense pain at the same time in the mind of a child. And what happens? The mind splits off to an alternative personality. And then the cult, check this out, programs that alter. Now, I know that this sounds crazy, but this is real, guys. Legitimately real. I'm working with, like I said earlier, a satanic ritual abuse victim that has been programmed. She has a trigger. What does that mean? They program this alter in this woman's mind that when she hears a key word, she will go into a trance-like state and come back to the cult. They don't want them to escape. So the phone rings, the woman answers, and they hear a keyword, whatever that is. They can pick any word they want. It's not going to be a common word. Otherwise, she'd get triggered all the time. So it's something that the cult, let's face it, it's something that Satan comes up with to bring them back to the cult. Hannah, did you experience any programming?
Yes, a lot of programming. It started in the coven when we were 2 years old. When the children were 2 years old, they were taken into a room, tied to a chair, hands and feet tied to a chair, and made to watch films, slides, like slideshows of horrible animals being killed, people being killed, all kinds of torture. And then to reinforce that, they would put one of the slides was of a rabbit, and it was being horribly tortured and killed. To reinforce that to us children, we all had a picture of a rabbit in our bedrooms. Every child of the coven had a picture in their bedroom of this, not of the tortured rabbit, but of the cute little rabbit, what it looked like before they did that. As a reminder, and you mentioned alternate personalities. I had many alternate personalities in order to cope. It's a gift from God that allows a person who is in that kind of situation where you're having pleasure and pain at the same time, and you can't sort it out, and then you have this guilt because, oh, this might have felt good, but you feel shameful because it's not supposed to. You feel like it's not supposed to, and it's your fault. It really messes you up, and the only way that I could cope was to be able to go away, dissociate, and create another part of myself. And I had many of those, many alters over time. When I was 8 years old, my mother decided that she was going to sell me into sex slavery, but she was my handler. I was trafficked all over, and you're always blindfolded, always unaware of where you are. You don't even know what state you're in. Sometimes you go by train, sometimes you go by plane, different modes of transportation. So you never know exactly where you are. You just end up in a room with a person that's going to abuse you.
I am so sorry you had to experience being trafficked. This breaks my heart, and I thank Jesus that you have been healed and restored through exorcism and the compassion of Jesus Christ. I want to explain to you listening how sex trafficking fits into the context of a satanic cult. There are many reasons why, but one of the more common reasons is that sex trafficking a child is used as a tool for cult indoctrination. Cults, particularly those with a satanic or ritualistic focus, often use trauma to break down a person's identity and values. The extreme trauma caused by a mother's betrayal often is used as a tool to make the child question everything they know about love, safety, and morality, replacing these values with the cult's own beliefs. The trauma serves to weaken the individual's psychological defenses, making them easier to mold according to the cult's beliefs and practices. Another reason is that by forcing the mother to become a handler and participate in such horrific actions, the cult ensures the mother's involvement, making it harder for her to leave or expose the group. The guilt, shame, and fear of repercussions from these actions could serve as psychological chains, binding both the mother and the child to the cult for fear of legal or spiritual consequences if they were to attempt to escape or reveal the truth. Hannah, for anyone who has experienced being sexually trafficked by a cult, what words of encouragement can you offer them?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you waking up feeling overwhelmed by depression, anxiety, loneliness, anger, or addiction? Despite your efforts with self-help programs, books, spiritual practices, or counseling, do you feel like nothing has brought lasting relief? If this sounds familiar, I want to offer you a different approach. Exorcism is often overlooked, but can be a vital part of finding true healing. It's not like what you see in movies. It's a compassionate process aimed at addressing deep-rooted issues that might be causing your suffering. Demons can contribute to our struggles, and I'm here to help you confront and overcome them through the compassion of Jesus Christ. Visit my website at justind.com and take the first step towards a brighter future. Book an appointment today, and together, let's start your healing journey.
What I want people to know is you mentioned there is hope, there is healing, and I want to tell you there absolutely is. I was suicidal. The reason why I had been so suicidal was because it was the anniversary of one of my children's death. One of my children had been killed in the coven. Actually, two of my children had been sacrificed, but that particular day, that time, was when my daughter had been sacrificed. I also had a son who was sacrificed. It wasn't until I started going to the Exorcist that the altars began to learn to trust and heal. It took a long time. You remember had been through this for a long time, so it takes a while to heal it, and it can be pretty complicated with the altars and the programming. We never did figure out the programming, but we found how they programmed me exactly. But we didn't need to, because I remembered enough that you mentioned your client hearing a word on the phone, a trigger word. That went on with me too. Colors also were used to trigger me, and sounds were used to trigger me. And two of my altars were triggered to do evil things. And that is another thing I had to get past, knowing that part of me had done such a thing. But God was there every time when I would be hurt or harmed or afraid. He was right there with me, and always protecting me and letting me know. And when I was 4 years old and I was being molested, I had hid in a closet, and Jesus came into that room, and I thought it was my father. Jesus put his arm on my shoulder, and I thought it was my father. But then all of a sudden there was this bright, beautiful light that I can't even describe. I've never seen before. Hopefully I'll see again in heaven. But it was so incredible. I turned around. I just wanted to turn around and see what it was. It was Jesus. And he said to me, I will always be with you. I'm always with you. And for some reason, all the way through my life, with all the other abuse that went on, somehow I knew he was there, that Jesus was there, and that I would get through it. It didn't feel okay. It didn't take away the pain. But I always had this belief that it was going to stop at some point. And it did.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful that Christ came to you and showed himself to you at such a young age. And it did happen. You did get out. You had that hope and you got out. Now, you mentioned, Hannah, two of your children were sacrificed. Common in many Luciferian cults, satanic cults, is that they have a concept of what's called breeders. And this means that women are used to have children so that those children then can be sacrificed to Satan. This legitimately happens. This is not fake. This is fact. That in some of these covens, women are intentionally impregnated. They are not brought into doctors. They are not brought in for care. The coven takes care of them until it's time for birthing. Sometimes they have doctors that are Satanists that perform the birthing of the child. They don't want a social security number so that when that child's gone, no one knows. So it's kept within the cult. Fact, not fiction, folks. We deal with this in our Exorcist network. Hannah, you mentioned having your two children, a son and a daughter, sacrificed. First of all, I am so sorry that you had to experience that. The trauma behind that is excruciating, and only the power of the Holy Spirit and the compassion of Jesus Christ could ever bring healing to something that traumatic. In your family, Hannah, was it your responsibility to have children for the intent of sacrifice to Satan?
Yes, it was. Later, my mother, who seemed to take the position of high priestess, which was actually my grandmother who was a high priestess and my grandfather who was a high priest. My mother took my grandmother's position over and made decisions. And her decision was that I was going to be a breeder for a time. And then when they were born, they would be killed and I would have to do it. My first child was born when I was 13, my daughter. I was forced to take part in her death. My second child was also had to do the same thing with my son, and he was born when I was 18. The guilt and the shame of that was with me for such a long time. And I used to tell myself, how could you do that? Why didn't you just let them kill you? I don't have an answer to that. They would have killed them anyway. And I had two other children later on that I needed to protect. So I did what I felt I had to do. I was very young. Bothers me today. But it's different now. God has healed it so much that I can look at it and not feel that guilt or that shame anymore, but feel sadness for my children and for people in the coven who are so, like my mother, who were so deceived by Satan that they would demand such a thing. It's really hard to understand that. But in those times, God was right there too, all the time, telling me it's not your fault. And he led me to the exorcist who helped me and actually saved my life.
Hannah, again, words cannot express the sorrow that I feel for you having to do that. Now, bear in mind, you're 13 and 18 years old. You're still a child, and they're having you do that. It's just awful. And another thing that cults will do is they will have a child go up and even at a young age begin to program them by having them sacrifice baby dolls to prep them for this, and then begin to show them images or be involved in rituals and put the blame on them. Look what you've done. Look what you've done. Now, this is evil at its worst. This is awful, but this is real. Hannah, since you lost your children to the cult, they murdered your children. In my opinion, you did not. You were a child, a victim. You have received healing through that. Was there anything that triggered you in life that you began to understand and begin to see some of these things in your mind? Because a lot of times with disassociation, it holds that pain from the core of the person's personality. When it came to your children, was there anything in life that began to trigger memories or part of your altars that would bleed into your main consciousness of you seeing some of the sacrifice your children? Was there anything in life that began to bring that out into your memory?
Yes. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was molested by a teacher, and helping her through her feelings about that and the whole court thing and the man getting off, and he molested 19 children and got off. It was an ugly situation and devastating for me and my daughter, both of my daughters. It affected the whole family. I started having nightmares, remembering my own abuse while trying to help my daughter. And some of her issues that she was going through and would talk to me about would trigger mine. And then it was like, began to be like a flood. All the memories started coming back little by little. First started with remembering a young boy who had molested me, and then it was my father who had molested me, and then it went on to the coven and the stuff that began happening there and starting at a young age. My first job in the coven was to be the scapegoat, and they took me out in the woods and they used the Bible. They didn't use a Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey. Bible. They used the Holy Bible and just perverted it, changed it up, and made it fit whatever the evil was that they were doing. And my job of being the scapegoat was to make atonement for the rest of the coven and their sins. So that was my job at 4 years old. They'd send me out into the woods for 3 days alone up on a high. They would build like a poles out of poles and put it like a bed up on top and set me up there naked, no food, no water. And I started remembering those kinds of things. And it was strange how I remembered things was like in chronological order. It just got, as things went by, it just got deeper and deeper into the pain of it all. And having held all that back and not knowing that for so many years, and then all of a sudden it came forward. It was, I needed help. I really needed help. And I went to secular mental health counselors, and they kept me alive, but they didn't know how to help, and they didn't believe my story. And so I quit telling them my story. They had so many different diagnoses for me that were never correct, so many assumptions. That was also very hurtful. The labels that people give people when they don't understand them, they don't have any clue. That was another part of the pain of it all. Just what the coven does to what happens after you try to tell somebody, when you get enough courage to tell somebody and then they don't believe you. That was also very painful and traumatic.
Yes, and that is why they are so extreme in what they do, not only for worshiping Satan, but who's going to believe that somebody sacrificed their own child that's in psychology or counseling? The first thing they're going to say is that you're delusional, paranoid, schizophrenia. I'm very sorry that you had to experience that. In Dr. Larson's network of exorcists, which, as I've mentioned, I am heavily involved in, we believe you because we work with this. We understand there is a way out. You do not have to stay in a cult. Hannah is proof. You can get out. And speaking of getting out, Hannah, when you decided to go to an exorcist for help, and this exorcist was in Dr. Larson's network, this is why this exorcist understood how to help you. And if anyone listening wants out of a coven or Satanism or Luciferian generational bloodline cult, reach out to me. I can help you. Not just me, but many exorcists in our network. You do not have to stay where you're at. You can get out. But Hannah, speaking of getting out, when you decided to get out, what was that like for you? Were there repercussions from the cult? Did they just back away? Obviously, they have level of control over your mind. There's the whole concept of astral projection where people can watch and understand what you're doing. When it was time and you said, I want out of this, I need help, I am desperate, you found an exorcist that could help you. What was that like for you, going out of this cult?
I didn't find an exorcist for several years after I got out of the cult. But the day that I decided I had to get out, or my two remaining children and myself were going to die, my father had called 2 or 3 times and said that I had to come to the Christmas celebration. And he asked me, "You're coming, right?" And I told him, "No, I'm not. I'm not going to be involved in any of the stuff that you do anymore. I'm not part of that. I don't believe in it. I know who God is, and it isn't Satan." And he was very angry. And they sent people. He told me, "They're on their way. They're on their way to get you." And we lived about 30 miles from my parents. And so I told my children, I said, we have to pack up and leave. They didn't understand. They were young. They had already killed our dog in the front yard because they were mad because I didn't follow something they wanted me to do, and which was kill somebody. They were already mad, so they killed the dog, and they tried to find the cat and kill it, but they didn't find it. And it was just, I knew I had to leave. So we went from shelter to shelter until we could find somebody who could really help. And they found us twice. They found me twice. My children had grown up by then and were on their own, but they found me twice. And the first time they set me on fire. The second time they raped and beat me. And then they tried it again a third time. And when they came to me the third time, I said, go ahead and kill me. That's what you want to do. Go ahead and kill me. I'm not running from you anymore. You'll just send me to God, and what could be better than that? And they left, and they've never touched me since. Shortly after that, I found an exorcist that was able to help me, and things started getting better for me, and I have been sharing my testimony, and all I can say is, if you are involved in this kind of thing, there is a way out. Call Pastor Bob Larson's. Look at his website. There is a way out. There is help. And I encourage you to do that. You don't have to live like that.
Thank you, Hannah, for that encouragement. And yes, Dr. Bob Larson, you can go to his website, boblarson.org, and read over the information. He can help you. And also underneath him is DWJD, which stands for Do What Jesus Did. That's his network of exorcists. So you can go to DWJD. You can find your region and get set with a team to assist you. So we have regions in America, Northeast, North-South, Southwest, Southeast. So we have regions in America, Canadian regions, European regions, region in Australia, and on it goes. So you can find a region to get help if you want to work with DWJD under Dr. Larson's ministry. So you can either work with Dr. Larson, or you can go through DWJD, or you can contact me, and I'm going to get you in touch with DWJD as well. Like I said, I work with them. There is hope. There is a way out. There definitely is a way out. And Hannah, right now, it is Halloween. I wanted to ask you about this before we get to the end of our interview. A lot of Christians participate in Halloween. I'm curious to know, in your opinion, should a Christian participate in Halloween? Yes or no? And let us know your thoughts from your perspective.
No, they should not participate in it. And Halloween is the most evil of all of the rituals that are done in the coven. The rituals take place all throughout the year, but Halloween and Christmas are the two worst holidays because of the sacrifices that they do and the evil that they do. And Satan takes this as worship. When children are going out into the night dressed in goblin costumes and all different kinds of costumes, Satan takes that as worship. And he loves to get worship. He wants it so badly to take it from God that when you do that, you're opening yourself up to a demon. When you participate in that, and I know that a lot of people don't understand, they just think it's a fun holiday where kids go out and get candy from the neighbors. That's not all that it is. It's a very evil holiday, and a Christian, no one should participate, but especially a Christian.
Thank you for that, Hannah. And obviously, as an exorcist, I agree. I agree. Why give Satan worship indirectly, even if you don't understand it? That's how Satan is. It disgusts me. Throw some candy in the mix and get everybody to dress up. I dress up as a dog, or I dress up as a cat. I'm not going out as a demon or Satan or anything evil or the Grim Reaper or anything like that. I'm a cute little thing. Irrelevant when it comes to the spirit realm. See, people want to view things logically through human reasoning, but Satan doesn't think that way. In fact, God's values are not our values. God's thoughts are not our thoughts. God's ways are not our ways. And so that's something to keep in mind. When you set human reasoning aside and you look at it supernaturally, as Hannah has indicated, it doesn't matter if you're out as a pickle. Satan sees that as worship because you are participating in the holiday, his holiday. That's not God's holiday. It's his holiday. It's just something to keep in mind as Christians. Hannah, thank you so much for sharing with us on the show today. I appreciate your time, and I pray that those of you listening who are in cults, covens, generational Satanism, you're here for a reason. You're listening to this for a reason. God wanted you to hear this so that you could have hope that you can get out to. You don't have to stay trapped and tormented for the rest of your life. Jesus Christ can free you and restore your mind. Like Hannah mentioned, she had so many clinical diagnoses that they thought probably she was crazy, completely mentally unstable. But what they did not understand is disassociation, altars, programming, ritual abuse, blood covenants. They don't understand all of that stuff. They just diagnose people as schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar, on and on it goes, because they don't have the training or the understanding. We do. We understand what you've been through, and we can help you get out. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Hannah, at the end of every episode, I always have my guest offer words of encouragement to the audience. And today, I'd like you to do the same. I'd like for you, Hannah, in your own way, to offer words of encouragement to people who are listening right now that might be dabbling in witchcraft. They're just curious about it. They're just getting into it. Maybe a little bit of Satanism. Then there are those who are listening who are in covens, fully practicing witchcraft. Maybe not to the degree you experienced. Maybe they're out in the woods doing their ceremonies, leaping naked over fires, all that stuff that the Wiccans get into. But then there are people listening that actually are into the type of Satanism you were raised in. They're listening, Hannah. They're listening. And God is speaking to them. Can you offer some words of encouragement to all these different types of people who are practicing occultism, some as extreme as what you were involved with? Go ahead, share some words of encouragement and inspiration to them.
I would like to encourage you all to really think about what you're doing. What I mean by that is, have you been pulled into something that you don't want to be in because of loneliness or because of abuse, and you want to fit in somewhere, so you've chosen to join these groups? Was this really your decision, or was it someone else's? And I want you to focus on what you really believe is true. Because so many people, they haven't asked themselves, what do I think? What do I believe? I didn't ask myself. I just thought what my parents did. Just coven told me. I didn't know I could have my own thoughts like that for many years. I encourage you to check that out for yourself. Go there and look at it. I also want to encourage those to check out the Bible, the truth. You need to know the truth. And I want to let people know that our victims of the coven, it wasn't their choice, that they have been born into it or were brought in it by someone else. That happens a lot, where people are taken to rituals that by a neighbor, by a friend, and it wasn't their choice. I want to tell you, God has a plan for every person, even those that are deep in satanic cult. He had a plan for every single person. In Jeremiah 29:11, it says in the Bible, in the Word, that He has a good plan for you, for your hope and future, to give you a hope in the future. And so I'm telling you, there is hope. And He wants you to be healed. He is your creator, and He wanted a family. We are His children, all of us.
If you're facing torment, fear, or something you can't explain, you're not alone. I've walked with many people through deliverance, and I've seen Jesus bring real freedom. If you're ready to take that first step, go to justind.com and book an appointment with me. I'd be honored to walk with you on your healing journey.